Hi, I'm Dawn Petek, and welcome to another episode of Essential Healing. In today's healing conversation, my special guest is Dawn Cady, and she is a pain coach. So, welcome, Dawn. Thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's going to be weird saying, "Hi, Dawn, it's Dawn."
I know, I just thought that. I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like it's strange, but yet we have that in common from the onset, right? That we share the same name. So that's awesome.
And
So
short surname as well. We've both got a short surname.
yes, we do. Yeah, and we were talking right before we started the episode about how it's fairly simple, and mine's the same way, but it ends up getting kind of chopped up very easily, even though it's simple.
Yeah.
I'm sure that probably happens to you too. In fact, I think you were saying that right before we started. So, yeah, well, awesome. Well, this is, we talked a little bit before the call today, and we talked just a little bit on Facebook Messenger, but really this is the first time we're meeting each other. So we've really only had just, like 5-10 minutes before we, started this, before we hit record. So tell me about you, where, maybe share with the audience where you live, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I live in Australia. I live in a place called the Blue Mountains, which is like 1 hour from Sydney.
Okay.
I'm not Australian though, so in case anybody's listening going, that's a really strange Aussie accent. I'm from the UK originally, from a place called Yorkshire. So Yorkshire pudding, if you've heard of that.
Uh-huh, I have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm a pain coach, and what that means is I guide and show people how to heal themselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you to Sydney from the UK?
Oh, this is an interesting story. So I was in a relationship for a long time with a professional rugby player in England, and his career was over. So he wanted to move to Australia because their amateur level is quite high here. And we moved because it's sunny, it's really cold where I'm from.
Uh-huh.
And when we arrived, it just kind of like, it was almost the way that I can describe it. It was, we became friends. We were no longer in a relationship anymore. It was like we became friends who moved to the other side of the world together.
Mm-hmm.
And the intention was actually for him to open up a cafe and take down the path of a new career because he'd lost his professional career. Mm-hmm. And I was going to go and work in a bank and go back into corporate. And then we were going to have kids, but it just didn't feel that way. We just became friends. Mm. So he moved to Canada and married a Canadian, and I stayed in Australia and married an Aussie.
Wow. That's quite a journey, really. And how it's how it morphed into, such diverse, that he went to a completely different place in the world, but you stayed there. So how interesting. Well, that's really
know. And it was his dream, not mine. I was like comfortable in the UK. I was okay in England. I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm kind of like go with the flow. And I was like, all right, we'll move to Australia. What's the worst that can happen? It didn't work out and I moved back.
Right.
So I ended up staying.
So what made you decide to stay? Was it that you met your husband? Is it your current husband? Or
yes, that's right.
Okay.
No, what had me stay was it had taken a lot for me to get residency. So at that point, what had happened is I had to go through a lot of things to be able to stay in Australia. And I was like, if I move back to England, it's going to be a step backwards because I'm going to have to slot back into the life that I had before. I've created a kind of a new life here, even though I'd separated from my partner. And then I had to go find a new job and new friends and everything. I was kind of like a new beginning. It was almost like if I go back to England, I'm completely taking a step back. Mm-hmm. But if I just create a new life here and not just leave all the work that I've done to be able to head towards getting residency, then I'll just stay here. That makes more sense. And then once I've got my residency, then I can make the decision whether I want to stay in Australia or not. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I understand that.
Hard work.
It is a lot of hard work. It just reminds me because I was, I'm a U.S. citizen, but I was born in Canada of U.S. parents, and both my parents are gone. And a couple years ago, I went to get my U.S. passport, and I realized I couldn't get it because even though I've lived my whole life or since I was like, 9 months old in the US, I didn't have anything to prove I was a US citizen, no paperwork to prove it because my parents never got like a certificate of naturalization or anything. And so
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how much work it took to do that. And it really gave me some compassion for people who are trying to, immigrate into a different country or, change their residency because it took so much. I mean, it took me, I think almost a year and a half because I had to I had to get my parents' death certificates in order to get their birth certificates. I had to get their marriage license. I had to jump through so many hoops to try and get everything together just to say, I am who I say I am. And yes, I do actually reside here and I am, legally and naturally a citizen. So I can, I can relate to why you wouldn't want to have to step backwards after all of that work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
lot of work emigrating to another country. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about either the work that you do or your journey into that work, or maybe a little bit of both.
I think both might be a good idea because
Okay.
people say a pain coach. That's interesting. I'm like, yeah, it is, isn't it? And the reason why I came up with that is because we've not been taught how to look after our bodies. We've not been taught how to heal ourselves. And we're also not being shown what pain means and what it's actually a symbol of, what's going on, what is your body trying to communicate with you. And I realise that a lot of us just need our hand holding for some of the way, and then we'll understand what's going on and we'll intuitively understand our body.
Sure.
But some people just need to be held and guided in the beginning. And the reason why I came across pain coaching is I'd suffered from chronic pain from about 12 months old. So a
Mm,
very long time, over 30 years, in fact. So it
wow.
started with the ears, the nose, the throat, kidney problems, bowel disease, kidney disease, thyroid disease, and then disability. So my
Wow.
entire life, really, if you think about it, there's only been maybe 5 or 6 years, which is at the back end
Mhm.
of where I've not deeply suffered
Mm,
from some kind of disease in the body, so dis-ease in the body, or from chronic pain. So I was like, you know what? I know what it's like to truly suffer with your health.
mhm.
I know also how to come out of it. I also know how to heal my body by
Right.
using my mind and understanding. So I was like, you know what? This needs to be shown because it's not easy. It
Mhm.
really is difficult because we've been given these programs that our health is not our responsibility. We give our power away and our responsibility to our doctor. We give it
Mhm.
to the specialists. We give it to the surgeons. We give it to everybody. And we don't really own that much of the power of how we can heal ourselves and communicate with our body and use our mind to help our body heal.
Mhm.
We've been taught how to use our mind to hinder our body. The
Right.
stress, the anxiety, the self-worth, the self-talk, the
Mhm.
fear that's going on for us.
Mhm.
What about reversing that? And that's how I came about. I was like, you know what? If I can go this end of the scale and completely destroy my body unintentionally, then
Mhm.
surely I can heal it.
Mm. Especially with intention, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And it's just noticing all the nocebo plantations that have been put into our mind. And what I mean by nocebo is you've got the placebo effect, sugar pill, double blind studies of pharmaceutical companies testing things, surgeries where they don't actually operate. They just cut you open and don't do anything and stitch you back up. And they
Mhm.
work. And I was like, okay. I was like, so what's the opposite of that? And I researched it. It's the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect is nothing can be done for you. This is your life. I'm really sorry, but this is what you're going to live with. And I experienced all of that through every single journey that I went through with my own diseases and my own pain. It got to that point that nothing can be done.
Right. Wow.
And
Yeah. What a shift that is.
yeah, it's a huge shift. And that's what I help people have the shift with. But the thing behind it, Dawn, is that you have to get to that point where you go, I'm done. This way is not working.
Mhm.
I'm done. And
Right.
I'm not living like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to take responsibility and I have to do the research myself. And when you get to that point, that's half the battle there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then that's where you come in, right? Is to help
that's right.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's great because, and the point that you made about a lot of people not knowing, how to do that or where to start, I think that's so true because especially, even though we have all of those gifts and all of those abilities inherently within us already,
Mm-hmm.
we're not taught to use them. So we don't know that they're there. It doesn't occur to us that they're there. We don't even know where to start to use them. So I think that's amazing that, you do that you help people with that and help guide people in that way. So tell me a little bit more about what that looks like or maybe some of the other, anything else you'd like to share about that.
Yeah. So I created a method called the neural alignment method because I actually realized that when my mind was involved in the healing process, it happened quicker and easier than when my mind was against it. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So then one day I realized, and I got out of bed and I was like, I am going to preempt myself having pain right now. I'm just about to say to myself, I've got pain, when I didn't even have it. It had not come on yet, the pain, but I was already languaging and preempting it before it had come. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm actually setting myself up to have a really bad day and it's not even started yet. And that's when I started to really notice, and I'm like, okay. And from a young age, I knew how powerful my mind was because I was always the one that wanted to take care of people. And what I mean by that is, in England, it's normal for teenagers to drink at age 14, to have a gathering and drink alcohol. I know in the US it's 21 and in the UK it's 18, but no one takes any notice of that. There's not much to do. Growing up in a cold country, there's no real culture there anymore. So it's just you get together and you drink, and you've seen your parents, your ancestors, you've seen your friends' parents do the same. On a weekend, they just drink. So 14 years of age, you're drinking with your friends at someone's house. And my friends would get drunk and I would get drunk. And then I'd go, hang on a minute, who's in control here? Who's in charge? Who's going to look after us? I have to sober up because I'm not allowing anybody to take advantage of me, nor am I going to allow anybody to take advantage of my friends. So I accepted this responsibility from a very young age. I had to grow up very quick from a very traumatic childhood. And I would go and separate myself from everybody, and I'd go sit in the bathroom for 5 minutes and I'd say, I am sober as a judge, and I would chant over and over and over and over again until I walked out of the bathroom completely sober.
Wow.
So I knew from a young age the power of my mind. And that's what I teach people is, if you can harness the power of your mind and use those affirmations, those chants, and channel your mind in a way that dictates and tells your body where it needs to heal and how it needs to heal, and recognizing and then allowing the body to do its beautiful work, which is what it's designed for, is healing. Just look, when you cut yourself, it heals itself. You don't have to go and get involved in it. It just does it.
Right. It's something that we don't have to complicate, right? It's interesting. I know exactly what you mean by saying like you preempted it, because I noticed that recently. I've been having some troubles with my lower back and my hip, one of my hips, and I haven't been, I've unfortunately not been feeling well, and it's kind of like gotten worse and worse and worse. And I've just, I've noticed that there's certain things that then I have a hard time doing, like hiking or, things that I used to enjoy. And the other day I realized that, I was talking to my husband about it. And it's been frustrating for me because when I was younger, I was always, I don't think I realized how good a shape I was in. Like I didn't really have to make that much of an effort. And I always was pretty healthy and got around really well. And of course it was easy when my kids were young because I was active with them. But now that, I'm a little older and we're in a place where I don't get around as much because I mentioned to you that we travel full time. I travel with my husband. So we live in an RV. which is a lot smaller space. So I'm not up like moving around the house. And again, I don't have children that I'm chasing or anything like that. And so I realized how much I was really getting into that mindset though. And I noticed the other day that, you know, we were out and about and we got together with some friends, and I was trying to climb in and out of this vehicle, and it was a little high up. My husband's pickup was a little high up. And I realized that I was anticipating, and I think he actually pointed it out to me, like I was anticipating the pain before it ever started. Like I was almost posturing myself, getting ready for it. And I finally told him the other day, I said, all right, I decided I'm tired of being old. I'm not going to be old anymore. You know, I'm not going to play that story in my head. And it's been interesting how I haven't had as much pain the last couple of days, just because, you know, it's that mindset shift, you know, and our body just follows it, because our body says, okay, I'm old. All right, got it. That's okay. That's what you want me to do, is be old. I got it. I'll take care of that for you.
Exactly right. And when you have that deep realization, it completely changes your life.
Yeah.
Because you realize how powerful you are.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how do you, on the topic of trauma and healing from trauma, how do you see that show up, or how does the technique that you use kind of overlap with trauma, and maybe how trauma shows up for people, or, you know, how would you enter that into this conversation?
So in regards to trauma, generally most people, so I've got pain clinics in Sydney. So we have people who are on workers' compensation, they've been injured at work. There's always trauma behind it. And the injury is the cherry on top of the cake. So sometimes the actual, some things happen to them in the lead up, and then the accident has happened, and then the accidents become the trauma, but they don't look at what happened before in the lead up to the accident. Or some people have the accident, that becomes a traumatic event, and then their whole life is completely shattered by the experience, and they're locked in the trauma cycle and the story of the accident. So it's it's really interesting when you work with chronic pain, and it's a field that the Western medicine don't do a great job at. They're amazing at acute. I'm not going to take that away from it. It's incredible what they do and what they've created and how they can help people in the short term. But they use that same step by step in chronic issues, and you can't do that. And you can't do that in trauma. It's the same thing. You can't. It's a completely different beast. If you're going to call it a beast, it's completely different. You can't use acute step by step. It has to be, okay, we need to go back, but it's not about taking you back there to traumatize you. It's about understanding where it first started. Because if we understand where it first starts, we're not just putting out fires of symptoms. We're going straight back to the cause, and we're pulling it out of the root. Then the body goes, oh, okay, I can heal and repair now.
Because I understand, I get it. Like it's like learning. I think I've heard some people describe it as learning a lesson, but I would describe it as almost it's getting that insight from it. You know, that we look at it and say, oh, okay, this is what that represented to me, and then this is how it carried through, and it's like once you get to that place where you can get to the logic part, and it's not just in the emotional or not just in the physical, then it's so much easier to understand. And I think then it's easier to let it go, you know, or move on maybe, or or know what to do with next, you know?
And for me, even deeper than that is you can't fully reclaim your power if you don't know where you've lost it.
Yeah.
If you don't know where you lost your power, where you gave it away, whatever you perceive it to be, it was taken away from you. However you see that, there's no right or wrong how you see it. But how can you reclaim it back if you don't know where it is? Yeah,
that's so true. That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and then what happens is the story replays in your head. And if there's one thing that I'd love people to get away from this podcast, this chat that we're having, is that when you understand what's gone on in your life and you reclaim your power, and you stop playing those stories around in your head and use that brain power, that energy to play stories of I'm well, my body is healing, my body is amazing, your life will change.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get there, you need to find out where you lost your power so you can reclaim it. Then those stories that are spinning have no power anymore because they make no more sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're just there cycling in your head to remind you you've lost your power. In this story, you've lost your power. You need to go back, reclaim your power, then the story will just go. But we buy into it and we live in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that just takes all our energy. When really it's only there to remind you to go back and get your power.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Well, and I don't know about you, but one of the things I have found with, you know, in diving into my own healing journey or just learning about different modalities and stuff is that I see a huge division between, it's almost like where some people try to be on the other side of it, where they're just trying to be in that mindset of where they want to be, which is helpful. It is helpful. But then when the past stuff tries to come up, they block that out. So it's almost like they feel like they're doing something wrong because they're trying to shift to what they want to be. This other thing comes up and they squash it and go, okay, no, I don't want you to come up right now because this is what I'm trying to squash. And then you have the other side of it where you're like what you're saying, and trying to use the acute methods for the chronic stuff where we try to patch it up really fast, or we try to rip the Band-Aid off, because I've heard people say that too. In fact, I heard a story about a therapist saying something like that to someone who was trying to heal from trauma and actually heal from PTSD. Is, you know, the person was sharing that she was nervous about diving into some of her traumas, and the therapist encouraged her to get out a journal and start journaling some of the things that came up for her, which I thought was good. You know, I think that can help sometimes. But when the client made the comment, you know, I'm nervous about diving into all of that, the therapist said, well, you know, sometimes it's just like a Band-Aid, you just have to rip it off. And I thought, oh my gosh, no, like it's not necessary. It's not necessary. It's not helpful. There's gentler ways to do it. So it's like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be, we dive into it and, like you said, re-traumatize ourselves, because we don't have to relive it per se in the way that we think we do. And it doesn't have to be something where we focus on just 100% positive or 100%, you know, the new language, and not pay attention to what arises. I found it's a blend of both. It's using them together, the tools together, to help, you know, further, like help you continue to move and get that momentum forward.
That's right. Just slow down. That's the first step. Slow down and just watch what's going on. And what you're ready to see, you will see. And what you're not, leave it be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's one thing that I want to just go through the process with is, when I was on my own personal journey, I noticed about the swinging of the pendulum of suppression and then oversharing and then the positive psychology. And it became quite confusing when I was doing the research myself. And I was like, am I supposed to be positive all the time? Am I supposed to share everything? Because I'm being told that suppressing is what's got me in this situation. So am I to stop suppressing? So then I go into everything's great, everything's okay. And there was this confusion. I'm like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. And everywhere I looked, I got different answers. Positive psychology was saying, flip everything, look to the positive, because this helps your body. Your body will heal when you have positive thoughts. And I'm like, you know what? That's not accessible all the time. So is that putting pressure on me to be someone that I'm not, and that who I actually am is not good enough? And I started to notice that it was playing the program, I'm not good enough. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that doesn't feel right.
Right.
And when you give people permission to just go with the flow and know that you don't have to be positive all the time, you don't have to let everything and spill out everything and overshare everything. and you can actually look at your emotions, but sometimes not suppressing, but choosing a moment that you can deal with it. Mm-hmm. So we're taught by society that it's weak to show all your emotions, it's weak to express yourself, it's weak to allow emotions to take over. Mm-hmm. So suppress them, hide from them, build this facade that everything's brilliant, Stepford to Housewives, everything's amazing, and inside that you're dying. Mm-hmm. And then you've got this other end of the scale that says, in order to have this wonderful, amazing life, you need to be spiritual, and you need to have positive psychology, and you need to feel this way all the time, and you should have these thoughts, and if any thoughts that come up that are not good for you, push them away, let them be, and just ignore them, and they'll eventually go away. Mm-hmm. What about going into the middle and creating balance? Neither is right or wrong. It's just that if you have too much of suppression or too much of, I need to work on everything, expose everything and flip everything, and everything has to be positive, there's no balance there. Mm-hmm. So go with the flow. If you're ready to let things go, let them go. And if you're not, be kind and gentle and say, okay, I'm not ready right now, but I trust that I will be. Because there might be something that you need to learn before you can go into dealing with trauma. There might be something that you need to learn. There might be a tool that you need to go out there and find. There might be someone that you need to speak to. You might need to find the right person. Mm-hmm. You might find the first psychologist or professional that you see, and you might not feel that trust with them, but you're like, oh no, I've just got to get this over with because I've got to reach this destination of positive psychology where I feel great all of the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But maybe you've gone to see that person who's not right for you to understand what is right for you, who is right for you, who do you want to see, who do you feel trust with. Mm-hmm. And we forget that everything is here to teach us, every situation. Absolutely. And unfortunately, we get trapped in the cycle of, this is hard, this is terrible, this is not right. I feel, because we're not getting out of it. We're not sitting there and going, okay, yes, that experience wasn't good. However, I now know that X, Y, and Z is not how I want to feel. So what's the opposite of that? Well, the opposite of that is A, B, C.
Right.
Okay. So now I've learned the lesson that I know that I want to feel that way. So it's not always that you've on this journey to find all the things that you love. Sometimes we can only find what we love by experiencing what we really don't like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally agree. It's, you need both. It's the black and the white, it's the yin and the yang. It's, you can't have one without the other. You can't, you don't know what's good for you unless you know what's bad for you. Yeah. And I really relate to, what you're saying about, kind of feeling like trying to use the positive psychology landed you in a place where you felt like you were saying, like you felt like, oh, I'm not good enough, because I went down the same path, as far as trying to use positive affirmations. And, I think there was a point in my life where, my husband and I were kind of going through a rough time, and one of my family members had introduced us to The Secret, which I do love. I do love the thought process behind it and the stories and the message behind it. But there was two problems that I ran into with it. And the one was that oftentimes I had a hard time coming up with what I wanted, because some of it is like, imagine where you want to be and feel as though you already had it now. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying really hard right now to get through the day. I can't think about where I want to be tomorrow or next week or next year or in 10 years. I can't even visualize that because I'm trying to just cope and deal with today. And especially that was a point in time in my life where I was in a lot of trauma responses and I didn't know it. And so that's really what I was trying to tackle and what I was trying to counteract, but I didn't realize that that's what it was. But it did it. So that was part of it. I couldn't visualize it, but then also I couldn't find the opposite. Like I wasn't in touch enough with my emotions to be able to say, okay, I'm feeling this way right now. And that's a negative emotions. And the positive side is this. And so that's the affirmation I needed to create. Like I couldn't do all of that. And so it just made me feel, I think, more broken. It made me feel, just more like I was beating my head against the wall. And I thought, well, gosh, everybody else, there's all these people, this book and this theory and these ideas are circulating the whole globe, and everybody is having these incredible transformations with it. And apparently I don't fit into that. That's how I was feeling, is there, I think it kind of reinforced the feeling of, I'm doing something wrong. Like there must be something wrong with me.
That's right.
And I love too the part of just being where you are and being in the middle and being in balance, because I found that to be so true too. And it was interesting because I kind of arrived at it in a different way, which was when I first started to really dive in and understand how trauma affects the body. And I was working with a therapist at the time who specializes in trauma work. And he was helping me he was trying to teach me how to resource, if you're familiar with that term, of it's a technique that's used in a lot of different counseling and therapy modalities. I'm not sure if it's everywhere in the world or the US, but it's sort of like that you envision a place where you feel safe. And then when your trauma comes up, then you kind of visualize yourself being back there. And that didn't exactly work for me, but what did work for me is I would just try to be where I was at. I would imagine, I would notice the things around me. I would sometimes count the things around me, which is another technique. Like sometimes I would look around and say, green trees, brown dirt, especially when I was feeling super activated in a trauma response. And I would do that to bring myself back into the present moment. And it was at those times that I started to notice that I was getting insights and starting to have some of those emotions come up and go, okay, I just need to notice this right now. I don't need to do anything with it. Yeah. It's just going to be another thing that I notice, just like the things in my environment, just like the things that are around me, just like the things I'm doing to ground myself to the present. Like I'm noticing that my feet are touching the floor and how that feels, that I'm also noting this emotion that came up. And I felt such a huge shift in just doing that. So yeah, I absolutely love that.
Yeah, absolutely. We just call them slightly different terms, I think, over here, but yeah, they're used throughout counselling and stuff like that. In psychotherapy, we call it an earth spot. So the psychotherapy that I studied, it's called an earth spot, where you find that place that you feel safe, that you recall back to. And I agree, in the beginning it's okay to use that, but there has to be a time that you let that go as well, because to me it's a crutch. We keep using crutches, and it's knowing when to let the crutch go. Crutches are brilliant.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to add that for me too, I realized down the road that the resourcing didn't work for me. And I certainly don't want to discount that as a method, or for anyone who might, that might work for them. But what I found was that whatever situation I put myself in, the thing that I was trying to escape followed me there. And it didn't matter. I mean, I would imagine putting myself like centuries back, almost in a place, like, I might imagine where we lived, and I would imagine the field or the valley being completely void of buildings, like nothing there, to where I was in a completely different time frame of anything that would have traumatized me. And it didn't matter. The feeling just showed up there. It just came with me. And so that was when I realized I had to find, other solutions. I had to go to the source. I had to deal with it within. I felt like I was running from a monster, and I realized that the monster was me. It was within me.
That's right. That's exactly right. And like we said, that technique is a crutch, and it's a great crutch. It's just like painkillers for people in chronic pain. It's great in the beginning. It gets you over. Don't be a martyr and go through this suffering in the pain, but recognize when they're not working anymore. Recognize when they're actually making you feel worse. Because personally, I had an addiction to painkillers, when opioids. So my injury, I slipped when I was pregnant. That's what left me disabled. And in order for me to cope, I needed to escape. And I was given lots of drugs because I was in a lot of pain, and that's how I escaped. I became addicted to the escapism of it.
Mm.
And recognizing that that's what they served, that was the purpose, took the power away because I recognized why I needed them. I was like, that's interesting. I'm not using the drugs to take the pain away, because really it's only taking the edge off. It's not really taking the pain away. But I'm using it because I can't function. I can't think. Everything is hazy. So I can just check out of this disgusting life that I'm living right now. And when I recognized that, then I went, okay, so the drugs aren't more powerful than me. I have just given them more power. So if I can give them power, then I can take that power back. And that's how I broke the addiction. And I used the tools and techniques and stuff like that. But that realization right there, and there is nothing wrong with having crutches. It's just knowing when it's time to put it down. If you break your leg and 6 years later you've still got that crutch, but your leg's fine, but you're hobbling around as if it isn't, then is your leg really fine or isn't it? You start to lose perception. You're like, oh, is it okay or is it not okay? And then you become the victim of, well, actually, I get more attention when I'm limping around with the crutch. So I'm just going to keep it here because then I have a story and then I have a purpose and I have something to share with other people, because I don't have that much within me. And that's the story I played out with I mean, I had a huge story. I slipped when I was pregnant. I was in such a bad way, addicted to painkillers, housebound, no family around, struggling with a newborn. Like, wow, what a story I had. What a story to tell people. And when I realized, oh, hang on a minute, I'm getting significance and purpose from this traumatic story and sharing it. Ooh, that can't be good.
Right.
Because I'm bigger than that story. But right now, I can't access that I am bigger than that story. That story is bigger than me. And again, recognizing that, I was like, right, wow, okay. It's okay. It's okay to be a victim. But one day I choose to not be a victim. And when you plant that seed and you don't judge yourself for doing it, and you just say, you know what, I need to be a victim right now and I'm okay with it. And the thing is, a lot of people say, snap out of the victim. Don't be a victim. If you're a victim of life, then do you know what? Honor yourself to be a victim, but recognize that you are being a victim and that you're choosing that role and that you have the power at any time to come out of the role. That is the difference. And that's how you get out of it. There's just some steps missing. People tell you not to be a victim. Yeah, don't be a victim because you have no power there. But if you are in victim, just recognize it and say, you know what, it's okay for now. Because it's a role that I need to play. Because my story needs to be heard. Because you know what, I've never felt that anybody's recognized me or seen me before. So maybe I just need to recognize myself. And then once I recognize myself and hear my own story and accept how bad it is, then naturally I'll just step into, right, okay, it's a story. I'm ready to shift and move on from the story, and I'm ready to let it go. But we're always pushing.
Yeah. Wow. That was, those were some amazing insights, and thank you for sharing your journey so openly and honestly. I really appreciate it. And those were, I think that's so incredible. And I think it's amazing how you honored those voices within yourself, and that you honored some of those insights coming up that you were seeing when you were playing out those stories or those patterns, and the fact that you had an awareness of it. Like there was something about it that it sounds like you were still separate enough from it that you looked at it kind of from an outside perspective and went, wait a minute, this is where I'm at and that doesn't work for me, and I'm going to choose something else. And I think that that's amazing, and I honor you for your work, but also I think it's amazing that you honored that within yourself. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So I'm interested in hearing just a little bit about your work. You know, what kind of clients does your work serve?
So I generally work with people. You have to be at the point where you go, you know what's happening right now and how I have managed my health is not working.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. If you haven't got to that point, no one can help you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come to that point yourself. It's not something that you can be forced into. And a really good book that I'd recommend to help people is Louise Hay, Heal
Yeah,
Your Life.
her work is amazing.
Exactly, that's the starting point. And when you read that and you read it a few times, then you will come to that realization yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you come to that realization, then seek people out like myself and Dawn and other practitioners out there. The thing that I would say the people that I work with is you have to be open.
Mm-hmm.
There's some weird things that you do on the journey that make no sense, but once you understand the psychology behind them and how it works, it will change your life. So you can't be a person that's a fixed mindset. You have to have a growth mindset. And you know what? You don't have to be in growth mindset 100% of the time, because I don't know anybody who is. You'll flip into the fixed mindset until you shift it. But you have to have an open mindset and go, you know what? I'm done. This is not working for me, and I deserve to have a better life.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to 100% be, I deserve 100% of the time a better life. Just a small glimmer.
Mm-hmm.
I work with males and females. I have pain clinics, but most of my work is online. I do pretty much all of my work online, apart from the physical pain clinics that I attend once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about people who have gone, I have chronic pain, I have a disease, or I have an illness, and I'm not accepting that that's the end of the road and I've got to live with this for the rest of my life. There's got to be an alternative way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend supplements or anything like that. That's a completely different field to what I do. But what I help people do is access the healing in their mind. Because once you get your mind on board, your body will sort itself out and it will tell you exactly what it needs. So you don't need to go out looking for supplements. Your body will tell you, and you'll be able to communicate at a level and how much you need. Because you have to take control and understand your body and what it needs. It knows everything. If you think about the most powerful computer in the entire world, times it by a gazillion, and that's how powerful your mind is. And your body is the most intelligent being on the face of the universe. It is so intelligent. It knows exactly what it needs, just like Mother Earth. She knows exactly where to grow, what to grow. We don't need to get involved in that process. She knows how to regenerate. Your body's exactly the same. It's the same intelligence. Mm-hmm. And once you harness that intelligence and you understand it and let it be, you'll heal yourself.
Mm-hmm. So incredible. I think it's amazing. I love the work that you're doing. And I want to give you a chance to tell people how to get in touch with you if they'd like to work with you. But before I do that, I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask you. And just find out first, before I do that, is there anything, because I know you were kind of, again, you were just really in the middle of this role of talking about, how important it is to, that we can heal ourselves, and, that it's, and, that the powers, and that we have a power to do that, and we can transform this. Oh, I know what it was, is you were talking about that you don't offer supplements, and that the body will tell you what it needs once it starts to get to that level where you're ready to do that, and you're ready to allow it to happen. So is there any closing thoughts you had about that before I shift to the next questions?
Yeah. Well, I'll just tie that little bit up. And your body, unfortunately, when you're in disease and in chronic pain, no longer trusts you. That's what's happened, okay? So the process of the work that I do is to build that trust again. And once your body trusts you, then what happens is you're able then to communicate with your body, and it will tell you exactly what's going on and what's needed. Mm-hmm. But it's been trying to tell you for so long, and you've not heard it. but it stopped communicating and it thinks that you're not going to do anything about it. So it sends this pain to say, look, I've been trying for so long to communicate with you, you've not heard me. So now I'm just going to have to send you pain because I can't live like this anymore, and nor can you. And that's what pain is. And that's what disease is it's just communicating you on a different level because it thinks that you're not going to listen to its words, you're not going to listen to its sensations. So now it has to send intense sensations and symptoms and signs. And once you tap into the energy and how incredibly powerful your mind and body is and harness that, suffering doesn't exist anymore. It dissipates.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazingly powerful. Yeah. I love the insight on there, in there that you talked about. And just, I mean, that's such an incredibly powerful point and visualization, I think, to talk about the level of trust with our bodies. I mean, wow. Yeah, that's huge. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. It was incredibly valuable. So on to the questions that I have for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your work, so in your journey with your work or in your healing journey, what was a big aha moment for you?
Wow. God, so many. A big aha moment was connecting what I did when I was a teenager, when I said to her about being drunk and removing myself, and tying that into the situation that I was in. When I joined the dots with those two and said, okay, that is no different to that. I just think it is, but it's not. I'm drunk and I feel that I'm out of control. And here, I'm actually out of control because I've given all my power away in regards to my health. When I joined those two dots and realized, that's when I was able to start healing.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, that's very powerful. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Okay, next question. What is life teaching you right now?
Ooh, what is life teaching me right now? That's a good question. I need to stretch for this one, Dawn. Life is teaching me right now that this one's really deep, and bear with me to be able to articulate this, but
sure.
My little boy is 6 and he's going on to 7, and 7 is a huge milestone for a child. The growth of the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking brain, starts to develop. So they want to think for themselves. So it's challenging because we've been taught to parent through we're in control, it's our responsibility, and we teach our kids what to think. And I'm doing a paradigm shift and changing, and it's actually, my little boy is not my responsibility. He's not my property, and I'm here to guide him and support him and help him. And I'm here to teach him how to think. That is the process that I'm going through right now. And anybody who's a parent who is beating themselves up and saying, I'm not a good parent, I'm not a good mother, father, whatever it is, you only have to get it right 40% of the time. Kids are very forgiving.
Right. That's an encouraging statistic.
40% of the time, if you aim to be the best parent that you can be 40% of the time, your kids will feel energetically that you are doing your best by them. And it's enough for the bumpy ride of the other 60%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what the universe is teaching me right now.
Yeah, those are awesome. Well, thank you. I think those are great advice and great lessons. And I love that that you are in that mindset of being a guide. And it's interesting because that's how I feel too. My children are older, so I have one that's 20 and one that's 23. And I shifted into that more when they were teenagers, that I felt like they were adults in training, and that, really my role was to guide them, but not necessarily give them all the answers. And a lot of times, I would talk to them about, what scenarios would look like you could go this direction and it might look like this, or this, but ultimately you're the one that has to decide, because you're the one that has to deal with, the aftermath of the consequences or whatever comes from it. But yeah, I can see so much value in, you know, I don't want to say I wish, because we can't go backwards, but, you know, I can see value in if, you know, in starting that sooner. You know,
Yeah.
I think that came about for me as I healed more. You know,
Yeah,
I was
that's
able to
right.
step into that easier as I healed. And so, but I think it would be true for any age, how important that is to be, you know, more in that guide role. So I think that's amazing. And I love the, yeah, I love the grace that you added, you know, basically the gift of grace that you're giving by sharing that statistic too. That's awesome. So, well, thank you so much, Dawn. This has just been an incredible conversation today. So tell me, if somebody wants to learn more about the work that you do, what is the best way for them to reach you?
Well, I have a Facebook group, which I absolutely love people being part of the community, teaching them tools and techniques. So that particular group is on Facebook, and it's called healyourself.dc.
Okay.
And I have a gift for your lovely listeners today.
Awesome. Awesome.
So that is www.alleviatepain.com.au/gift for you / So I'll send those links across.
Okay. And I'll put
And
those in the
what
show
this
notes.
is,
Yeah.
yeah. And what this is it's a mini little program, and it's a meditation. And this meditation is deeply profound in a way that it's not like other meditations that make you feel good in the moment. It's actually reprogramming your mind to no longer be anxious and stressed. It takes 3 minutes twice a day, and within about 10 days, you'll start to notice that you're not snapping. You can slow down. You'll start to breathe better, and you'll be able to recall nicer moments and make that shift naturally, that you're forcing yourself to be more positive. You'll actually do it on a deep cellular level and allow your body to do it without you forcing it to happen.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm excited to take a look at it. I'm excited to try it. I think that's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, again, Dawn, thank you so much. I honor you for being here and for your journey and for the work that you do. I think it's absolutely amazing. This has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate just being able to have the conversation in the depth. I think, you know, we were talking how because how deep we went, how fast. And so I love that. Like, I love that level of conversation with people where we can just, you know, just get right to the deep stuff right away. Cause that's what I enjoy. So I appreciate that, being able to do that with you today. So thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Great to meet you too, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. For those of you who would like to learn more about why your emotional patterns are keeping you stuck and how you can start to learn how to listen to your inner voice and use it combined with the power of our sense of smell to start to transform your negative beliefs and thought patterns, then I invite you to sign up for my free course, The Essential Healing Method, at theformulaforhealing.com. Until then, or until next time, thank you so much for joining us for this healing conversation today.